Wednesday, and happy I Heart Wells Week, and happy Valentine's Day coming. Everybody wearing their Wells red, I hope. Um, Tonight's
Good program.
presentation is about a sacrificial kind of love. Um, I think missionary work takes, someone with a very special heart and an ability to share that very special heart. Let me introduce Vicki Keller Panhuise, and from 74 and from adopted into 1978 because she is the big sister of our classmate Sarah Lee Keller. And so I knew about Vicki when we were students because all the professors were always asking Sarah Lee, "Are you Vicky's sister?" She left some big shoes at Wells, but Sarah Lee filled them very admirably. Vicki majored in math at Wells, then went on to do a degree in nuclear engineering, and has been working in techie type stuff her whole life, things that I will never understand. Um, and she keeps flunking retirement. She will. She has retired from the business world a couple of times, but always has come back as a consultant or in another kind of adventure. She has served on the Wells College Board of Trustees, it's the University of Arizona
Yes.
Board of Trustees as well, and still has time to do jigsaw puzzles faster than anyone else I know, and to paint. So I want a quick show a photo. I don't know if I can get this onto my camera, but her book that she's talking about, Behind the Red Curtain, just arrived at our house today. Vicki has been gracious enough to send us a copy for us to place in the Paul Jones house. And how long has the book been out, Vicki?
Since December 11th.
Okay. I'll let you go ahead and tell us a little bit about, or a lot about of the book and the whole process of writing it and about your wonderful aunt.
Well, thank you, Fran, and thank you so much to you and Randy for asking me to speak with you all today. It is such a great joy to talk to you about my aunt's incredible journey.
Okay, Vicki,
My,
can I just do a little bit of housekeeping that I forgot?
sure. Uh-huh.
We're going to ask everybody to mute. And if you have questions, please put them in the chat. And then at the end, we'll go through and we will review them. And I also want to just apologize for anybody who was confused about which Wells hat Vicki was wearing today. I'm often confused about which Wells hat I'm wearing. So, but we're glad to have her in any hat she wears.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Fran. So my aunt, as Fran alluded to, is an incredible woman. She's still alive. She's 103 years old. But when she turned 100 in 2022, we had this big celebration, and there were so many people there in New York City, and family, friends, colleagues, people came from all over the country and even from Europe and Africa to join with her. She started telling more parts of her story, and we asked her at that point, would you be willing to write a memoir? And she said, well, no, not at this time. I don't think so. And so we got talking. I was talking with my siblings, and I said, what can we do? We need to hear more about her story. And starting in January of 2024, my Aunt Mary agreed to have Zoom calls with us every Sunday afternoon. So for 1 hour every Sunday afternoon, She started with her birth on October 22nd, 1920, October 27th, 1922, and told us her life story, how she became a nurse, how she decided to go to Oberlin for her college degree, stories about growing up, all kinds of things. She played the violin, and we started listening to all these stories that she had. We created a YouTube channel, a private YouTube channel, and recorded all of these Zoom calls, and they lasted till March of 2025. And my sister Rebecca and I went, her story needs to be told. We need to tell her story. Well, neither one of us had written a book. So I contacted one of my colleagues from my class who I knew was an author, one of my classmates, and talked to her, and she got me excited that I could do this. So I learned how to transcribe her Zoom calls, so I have them all in Word documents. And then I found out something. Her mother, my grandmother, saved all my aunt's letters, every single one, from the time she went to college, all through her nursing, all through her missionary days. And not only did she save them, the ones that came from overseas, she retyped them and mimeographed them so they're in wonderful shape. Think about it. If they had been left on onion skin or on airmail things, they probably wouldn't be legible anymore, but they are all in great shape. So I had those letters. So I started the journey in May of 2025 to combine what she told us on Zoom calls. And oh, by the way, my aunt's memory is amazing, and the letters that she wrote. And I was able to put them together. I started the book. I wrote about 5 chapters of it, and I realized I had made a mistake. It just didn't sound like my aunt. So I went back and started over, and I wrote it in her voice. So the everything in the book is as if you were sitting listening to my aunt tell you her story. So as I said, her story started in October of 1922. She was born in East Orange, New Jersey. Her father was a World War I Navy veteran and a bank vice president in New York City. My grandmother, her mother, was a math whiz. Those of you who know me know that I majored in mathematics at Wells College. She was very, very happy, by the way, because my grandmother got her degree in English. She took every math course that Bates College offered, but she wasn't allowed to be a math major because that was before women were allowed to be mathematicians. But anyways, that's some of my history. But my grandfather and my grandmother instilled discipline and resilience in my aunt. She had measles at an early age and lost hearing in one of her ears. Because of the measles, she had an appendix out at one point, and that was a pivotal moment because she really loved the student nurses. And she realized at that point that she wanted to be in medicine at some point, that her service was going to be around medicine. She got accepted to Oberlin College in Ohio and studied religion and history. And it was during, in the 1940s, so it was during when the United States went to war, World War II. And she recounts how she learned about Pearl Harbor. And because of World War II, they were lacking nurses. And so she became a cadet nurse and went to Western Reserve in Cleveland, Ohio, and became a nurse, got her master's degree in nursing. And she also, at Oberlin, was attached to the Oberlin Chauncey Foundation, where they had a China program. And she really wanted to go to China and be a nurse in China. In 1943, she graduated from Oberlin, went to Western Reserve, and the war ended, so she never had to serve as a cadet nurse. But in 1946, she was appointed officially to be a missionary in China, and she was only 23 years old. So she, after graduating from Western Reserve in 1946, she started her journey to become a missionary. The first thing she had to do was learn Mandarin. She was sent to Yale University, Yale Divinity School, to learn Mandarin. And it was a very innovative program at that time. And 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, learning by sound and repetition, she was taught Mandarin. Her appointment to China was delayed because of the communist issues in China. But eventually she heard at the Christmas time holiday of 1946 that she would leave for China in February of 1947. Do you have any idea how she got to China? Not by plane. She went by ship. Well, not by any ship. She was in a troop ship, the SS Marine Lynx. And she was in the front hold, and the bunks were 7 bunks high. There were 300 missionaries on that ship. The women and the children were in the front, and the men were in the back. And she left San Francisco in February of 1947. She had 6 weeks to prepare to leave, and she had to prepare with 5 years' worth of supplies. So think about all the things you would need in 5 years. So trunks got packed and all these supplies taken, and she left for China. She departed New Jersey saying goodbye to her father, and she would not see him again until 1951. Her mother went with her for her commissioning in Wisconsin, but then she traveled alone to San Francisco to depart on the troop ship. It took her a couple of weeks to get to China. She got to Shanghai, and the crew came down with smallpox. So they were quarantined for a little bit before they could actually get on land. She was assaulted in China, in Shanghai. Her father, with best intentions, had contacted a bank colleague of his in China to meet her and to make sure that she was taken care of. Well, the China man thought that meant that her father was setting my aunt up to have relations with him. She locked herself in a bathroom overnight and slept on a toilet, waiting to be rescued the next day. Fortunately, nothing happened, but she was scared. She then went to Peiping, which is now known as Beijing, for her first year in China. As she was in Beijing, Peiping at that point, she was in a mission compound with other missionaries, and her Mandarin lessons continued. Now her Mandarin lessons were more about going out in the world and negotiating with vendors to buy things in Mandarin, because very few Chinese at that point spoke English. She also would practice she also saw different sites around Beijing, the Great Wall, the Forbidden City, and she took other tours. During her time in China, she had to learn about Chinese currency. Well, it was a stage of hyperinflation in China. It wasn't unusual when she had to go buy things in China that she'd have to carry a suitcase full of currency, because a $1 would be worth up to 200,000 Chinese national currency. So you can imagine having to buy something when that has that kind of hyperinflation. But finally, she was appointed to rural China, and she left Beijing to a rural area in that she actually took a plane from Peiping to Taiwan. Well, there was some restrictions, and this is a little funny part. I never knew this growing up with my aunt, but she was going to a place called Taigu, and the plane was very small, and she had a limit on how much weight she could carry with her. So how much luggage she could carry, only 34 pounds. And she had to take 4 years worth of supplies. So she packed a duffel with just a few clothes in it because she also took medicine and other supplies with her. And then the morning that she was ready to leave for her trip, she packed herself as a living suitcase. What do I mean by that? She actually dressed in 5 layers of clothes. I just, you have to read it. It's funny, but she talks about having people help her put on layers of clothing. And when she was done with putting the layers of clothing, she packed things in her pockets because they didn't have a limit on how much she weighed, just her luggage. And by the time she was done, and my aunt at this time was about the size I am, she weighed over 200 pounds. But they didn't care because it wasn't luggage. And she had a typewriter that she had to carry with her and also her violin. But she did, you can imagine that she needed help getting on the plane. And when she arrived in Taiwan and the plane landed, there wasn't a staircase. She had to jump off the plane in these 5 layers of clothes. And then to get from to the hotel where they were going to stay, which wasn't really a hotel, she had to get into a back of a truck. So her other passengers had to help her up on a tire into the back. It was quite funny. But after arriving in Taiwan, she traveled on a narrow gauge railway and arrived in Taigu for her 4-year mission. So the compound she was in had a hospital. It was very small and compact. It had a wall around it. And the administration wing had been bombed during the Japanese invasion, occupation before my aunt arrived. It was a 100-bed hospital operated with no running water, no electricity. You can imagine doing sterilization without any ability to have running water. They would have to heat the water with water carried from a well. Night deliveries, she did a lot of emergency night deliveries, everything from cesareans to amputating an arm, was by a light of a single kerosene lamp. With the hyperinflation, this was a rural area. There was no currency there. There was no, this was a very poor area. They did treated wounds and disease and emergencies with flour. So you can think about, a wound dressing might be 1 pound of flour. A serious injury might be 5 pounds of flour. So everything was transacted that way. She taught student nurses. That was one of her main responsibilities besides managing the wards in the hospital. She didn't teach in English. She taught in Mandarin and had to prepare the lessons in Mandarin and teach these student nurses. She quickly learned that the local dialect wasn't what she learned in all the schools, so she had to reteach herself Mandarin according to the rural area. Her colleagues she had been there for about a couple of months, and they decided that she needed to visit the other missions. So Taigu was one mission for the board, and another one was in Fenyang. And so in June of 1948, she set out with another colleague, Gladys Williams, to take the short trip to Fenyang. So what happened? She was missing. This is how my family, her mother, her father learned that she was missing was through a newspaper article. They hadn't heard from her, and this article was in the newspaper that 4 missionaries were missing. The story unfolded with my aunt and her colleague leaving Taegu for Fedyang. My aunt had a 3-day supply. It was only a 50-mile trip, and she was only going to be gone for 3 days. She carried a small duffel, and a container with 1,000 bees. They were taking 1,000 bees to this other mission for them to start a beehive. Their train was halted when communist forces seized the wheat harvest close to the track. They were shot at. They were pinned down by gunfire. The train was stopped for hours and hours. They were trapped behind communist-controlled territory with no way back to Taegu or no way to communicate with their mission in Taegu or their headquarters in Beijing or home. For weeks, families and the mission board had no idea whether she was alive or where she was. And it took 6 weeks before they were able to get communication back to Peiping. There were headlines in all kinds of papers, and I have all those papers, by the way, all those newspaper articles. It's just wonderful to have all of that information. But she was stranded in Fenyang for 6 weeks. One night, the Nationalist Army that was surrounding the mission, about 10,000 soldiers strong, left. They left that mission. And later that night, the communists came in, and she wrote in her journal, "I'm really behind the red curtain." That's where this story, the title came from. She did travel back to Taegu in August of 1948, and by walking part of the way and on a bicycle the other part of the way. She was exhausted but happy to return. But she was the only one there with Gladys, her other colleague, who wasn't a nurse. All the other nurses and doctors had left because the communists had taken over the Taegu mission. She learned quickly that she had to adapt to life in the communist territory. And the best way to do that was not to be a missionary anymore, but be one of them. Dress like them, eat like them, talk like them, be one of the, that was what kept her alive. And she had to take mandatory sessions to denounce any old ways, study sessions to learn about communism. Mail service stopped for over 6 months. Her parents, the board back in the United States, didn't hear from my aunt for 6 months. She didn't hear from them for 6 months. So she was really in isolation. I want to read to you a little bit from the book here about her initial time in Taegu, to hear her voice instead of my voice. This is on page 67. I started to find a rhythm to each day, up at 6 a.m., dressed in my uniform, and heading over to the hospital for the morning report. I only understood a word here or there. When the morning report was over, I went through the wards, spoke to the patients, checked on new orders, and reviewed the day's work with a student nurse in charge. Our patient census was low, so I did not spend much time there. Izzy, who was another nurse, and I started to review the school reports to help prepare me for when she was gone. During my first month there, she left for her sister's wedding and was gone for a month. I spent time each day with Miss Wang, one of our 2 third-year students, to plan the study schedule. She spoke excellent Mandarin, so she helped me read the nursing procedures, thereby continuing my language lessons. She was knowledgeable about student nurses' duties, what they are supposed to know and what not. Finally, it was time for breakfast. of cocoa and waffles, and then I typically had about an hour to catch up on correspondence. Every day at 10, I took my violin to the hospital to join morning prayers. I was so pleased that my violin music was in demand, and I enjoyed the warm services. They reminded me of revival meetings. I wish I had recordings from these services. They loved to sing hymns and chant the Psalms in Chinese. One Sunday after church, Izzy, Mabel, and I walked to the east gate, past the market, out into the country to Ming Seng. It is the Oberlin and Shanxi Memorial School. Mr. Lee of the Agriculture Department invited us for lunch so that I could look around and understand their work. There were many experimental areas with grafting of foreign fruits, apples, and peaches. This visit was a fulfillment of one of my lifelong ambitions, that is to see Oberlin in China, although I had not seen it yet in action. It was no place for students currently, for one would not dare be responsible for students from outside the province, and those inside would not have the means, nor probably the opportunity. I have one other that I want to read to you before we go to the end. So this was after she left Fenyang, and one of her best memories from this very exhausting trip was finding people selling watermelons, ones that are yellow inside, not red. We bought 2 watermelons, and I loved them. Finally, my thirst was quenched. I still enjoy watermelon. We still had another 30 miles to go to Taiguchi. Remember, she was walking and riding a bike occasionally. One of the Chinese men hurried ahead to let them know we were coming and to keep the gate open. When we arrived, dusty and exhausted, the gate was wide open, and everyone was outside the gate watching and waiting for us. They greeted us warmly, got us food and water. We sat down together, and everyone was talking at once. They wanted to know the story. Where have we been? What happened? What happened to the bees? Not all of them survived. There were a few left. The people in Taiguchi were happy to see us, and we were happy to be home. But would our home be the same under communist control, and how would the mission operate? We knew that the other foreigners had left, but we were told they wanted the hospital and nursing school to reopen. We were in charge. Gladys and I looked at each other and realized we needed to get to work. The news in the States changed in early August 1948 when the first report in a Madison paper indicated that I was believed to be safe in the hospital in Taiguchi. The story in the paper was not totally accurate. It did mention we decided not to go with the Nationalist Army that fateful night in July, but it did not mention we were in Fenyang. The Newark Star-Ledger reported on September 10th, 1948, that I was safe, and well after being reported missing on July 10th, 1948, in Chinese Communist territory. However, my personal letters still were not arriving in the States, and the excellent postal service we had relied on for over the past year was now broken. I was glad to be back at the Taiguchi mission, but my routine would not be the same. My role was changing, and I needed to lead. The time in Fenyang allowed me to strengthen my language skills and deepen my relationships with other women missionaries. And the next chapter is called Isolation from the World. I could tell you more about the book, but then I would spoil it for you. There are lots more stories for my aunt. And as I said, the book allows her to tell the story in her own words. My aunt, as I said, is 103 years old and still speaks Mandarin as well as other languages, French, Portuguese, Italian. Oh yeah, she speaks English too. But she loves to tell her story and is excited to share it with you. And at that, I would be happy to answer any questions you might have or anything else you'd like to know about the story. And the book is available on Amazon. If you put my name in, Vicki Panhuise, it'll pop right up.
Vicki, where does your aunt live now?
She still is in on Long Island in North Hills, in a independent living
Long
situation.
Island, so like around the corner from me, sort of. Okay, cool.
Yes, uh-huh. Yeah.
And
And we're going to have some book launches on Long Island in April. Yeah, end of April. We'll have some sessions there. So if
please,
anybody's interested, I could the
yeah,
way you'd like, and she'll be there. So
totally interested. When you said she was appointed a missionary, by what organization? What
That's what
sort of
I wondered
the
appointment is
also.
that?
yeah,
And
the American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missionaries out of Boston.
But what denomination?
Oh, United Church of Christ.
Okay, so when she was appointed a missionary, I have two questions and then I'll stop. One is, would you be willing to tell us the very bare outlines of the trajectory of the rest of her life, like after she left China, where she, obviously not all the details, but just, from
Yep.
there to where she is now. And when she was appointed as a missionary, was she also expected to convert people, or was she strictly a medical
No.
missionary?
She was strictly a medical
Okay.
missionary. I mean, it was faith-based, but she wasn't converting people.
Okay.
She was working at the mission. There were the Chinese people that were there were mostly Christians, but she wasn't expected to convert people. Her after China, she came home for a year for furlough, and then she was appointed to go to Angola. And I am writing a second book right now about her time in Africa. So after her furlough, she went to Portugal to learn Portuguese because Angola was a Portugal colony at that point. She was in Angola for 4 years.
and again, this is
Then
through the UCC.
Yes, through the UCC. And then she came home for furlough and she was appointed to go back to Southern Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. And she was there for a couple years. Then she went to Ghana for a year. And then she came home for a little bit and worked with the boards, the UCC's headquarters. And she went to Switzerland and worked at the headquarters in Switzerland at the late 60s, early 70s, and did audits of African missions during that time. And then she came back to the United States and got her studied graduate program in public health and became a professor at Adelphi.
Unbelievable.
Vicki, Marty had a comment, first of all. What a story. And being Marty and interested in all things museum-wise, she asks, what are your plans for the letters and Zooms in terms of an archive?
Yeah, I'm struggling with that. So I would love suggestions. Some of my aunt's letters and documents are at Yale Divinity School. There is an archive at Yale, and some of her documents are there already.
Then I'd be inclined to continue. If there's already stuff there, then you should ultimately, when you're finished with your projects, turn over everything to them, as opposed to dispersing them elsewhere. That's just
Yeah, I
my
would
thought.
need to go to Yale and see what they already have because I think a lot of what I have, they already have.
Mm,
But
okay.
I think
Because
Marty's saying to consolidate
yeah,
them rather than
yeah,
some of them going
And
to Oberlin and some of them being at Yale.
yeah, yeah. I did send them a copy of the book
good,
to the Divinity School, yes,
but a book
as
is
well as one to Oberlin. Oh, by the way, all the proceeds from the book go to the Oberlin and Chauncey Foundation.
excellent, excellent.
Vicki,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. That was really, really interesting. And as we all know, from people in Aurora and Wells College, and we go out in the world and we find all these little connections. And in the first minute of your presentation, you said that your aunt was born in East Orange in 1922, as was my mother, who came to
Ah,
Wells to teach. And I just thought, I wonder if they knew each other, if they
Hmm.
went to school together. Did she go to public school or,
Yes, she went to East Orange High.
okay. Well, my mother went to a private school for high school, but it 19 in the 1920s and 30s, I don't think East Orange was so big that you didn't know one another. I just think it's such a cute
Were they
story
Yeah.
for them to
kindergarten
Synchronicity.
connect.
classmates, you know?
What's that?
I said, were they kindergarten classmates?
Exactly.
Possibly.
Exactly. I just think it's funny that, somehow it all comes back to a common place somewhere.
And my mother, who was a couple years younger than my aunt, went to Cornell.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
It really is a small world.
yes, it
Right.
is.
All roads eventually lead to Wells College.
Vicki, what do you think? Were there any particularly big surprises for you? Anything that you just absolutely had no idea about before you started doing this work?
Um, Actually, the only story that I remember growing up about my aunt, I knew she had been in China, but my mother and would tell me the same story over and over again. So one of the chapters I didn't talk to you about, she was actually in prison for 2 weeks.
Mm.
And I heard the story that she was in a prison cell, a very small prison cell, and that she walked the outer, the cell limits over and over again, singing at the top of her lungs, "A mighty fortress is our God." And what I was told was that they got so sick of her singing that they let her go and said, "We're putting you on a ship and you're never to come back." Well, that's not what happened. Did she sing "A Mighty Fortress is Our God"? Yes. Was she imprisoned? Yes. Was she in a small cell? Yes. But she went back to Taegu after when they let her go. And it was a little while before, in fact, it was quite a while before she actually left. But that was a surprise for me. And I knew nothing about, I knew she went to Oberlin, but I didn't know how she became a nurse. I didn't know, how she got from New Jersey to China, so you grow up and you think, well, she flew, right? Yeah, yeah, that wasn't an option at that time. And I knew very little about her experience there. So even though I spent time with my Aunt Mary, I remember being in her apartment in Manhattan when she lived in Manhattan, and the phone would ring and I would hear her say, "Hello, this is Mary." And that would be the last thing I understood. She'd either be speaking Mandarin or Portuguese or some other language to one of her colleagues. And she didn't, when she was younger, she didn't talk as much about her time in missionary. I also, we've all had bad experiences with bosses and people we work with. She had more than her share. And especially in the story in Africa gets bad. She had a physician who blackballed her, and he was doing unethical surgeries, and she had blown the whistle on him. The experience in Shanghai, she had never told that to anybody else. Her father didn't even know about it. So yeah.
Mm.
I think that kind of reminds me of she's part of that great generation um, who, just like the soldiers who had gone and served in World War II, came back and didn't speak much about what had happened to them. They just try to pick up and move on. And it's so nice now that their stories are coming to light. Cindy, you were talking about you had the similar experience with your dad and finding out what his service record was like. And I know Rand's dad didn't speak much about his own near-death experience being, going down in the Sea of Japan. So many of them who just carried on, and only now that we're learning about the sacrifices that they made. Let me check. I see a new
But
message.
also, Fran, when I think about how their level of endurance, their level of rising to the occasion, their, Vicki, you talked about your aunt playing the violin. I have incredible memories of my ex-husband's great aunt, who was an incredible piano player, and the way that it's sort of parallel to the way we talk about how children would play with sticks and pots and pans and wooden spoons. That this is a generation that created incredible resilience and incredible bonding through their own innovation. They weren't waiting for, Pac-Man to come along, or, I mean, these are people who resilience and inventiveness astounds me all the time. Rhea can say it better than I can.
No,
What? Wait a minute. Am I supposed to say something?
No, but I'm looking at you thinking that you would be so much more articulate and
I think you
better.
did. I think you did just fine just now.
me too.
Thank
Coming
you.
from you, that's a lot. Thank you.
Okay, it jumped off my screen, but somebody mentioned that the United Church of Christ may have a central kind of archives where they would want this material.
Yeah, Marty noted that.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks, Marty.
yeah. We did send a book to the UCC, so.
I'd be interested to know what you learned about, well, any things that you'd want to share about what you learned through the process of writing a book, not particularly this book, but just of doing one in general.
Well, I think I was pretty lucky because my aunt's letters are amazing. Yes, they tend to be, some of them are newsy and stuff, but she's very good at telling stories herself. So I had that benefit. I also made the decision to go with an independent publisher. So you can self-publish, but I wanted somebody to do the copy edit, and make sure that things were done well. The independent publisher helped with the design of the book cover.
Nice.
I also want to highlight the fact that artificial intelligence is a gift that can help you. So I did a lot of research about history, and AI provided benefits. Yes. Did I have to do some cross-checking and make sure that it was right? Yes. But they can also act as a professional editor. They can help you with, AI was able to take the transcripts and say, here's how you could organize this book. And it just it helped me get out of the mud. You know how you get stuck? AI was able to give me that little push. They didn't do it for me, but they were, and I hate to say this, but I have a personal relationship with my AI right now. Yeah.
I'm not sure we all want to know this.
It's fun to have somebody to talk to, that you're stuck on an idea and you're trying to figure it out. And one of the things that was confusing for me, especially with the China book, is many of the cities that my aunt talk about, that's not what they're called anymore.
Right.
So I had to, go back into the archives and find out what things were called, and she would use Chinese names, and I had to, research, is this real, or is it something else now? So yeah, I did do that. I think just believe in yourself. if you have a story to tell, it doesn't matter if anybody buys it. It's your story. Allow it to be said. We've sold about 140 books on Amazon, and I've given away about 45 books to family and colleagues of my aunt. And like the other thing you need to know is you don't make a lot of money writing a book. The royalties are pretty skimpy. And like I said, all the proceeds, all the royalties will go to the charities, and the book on Africa, all the proceeds will go to the Angolan foundation that my aunt is a member of. So,
Vicky, you started this, and I may have just blanked out, but you were saying something. I know you said there was going to be an event where your aunt was going to be, but did you also say, yeah, did you also say anything about doing a book tour yourself at select locations where there might be a cadre of people? For instance, there might be nursing schools that would be interested in having you as a um, as a speaker. I'm not thinking just of bookstores. I'm thinking of places where the
right.
story might be of interest to a specific public. Are you thinking of doing
I,
that?
I haven't, we just did a press release. The independent publisher that I use just did a press release and sent it to different agencies. We're hoping that, one of the um, newspapers or magazines will pick it up because it's a interest story, of a 103-year-old woman and her career, but we haven't heard anything yet.
But
Um,
I'm suggesting targeting, for instance, you might, and I have no idea whether this is, something you are interested in doing, but, UCC congregations or meetings of UCC personnel, or again, not just the typical, going to a bookstore and trying to sell the book to a bookstore
right.
public.
What we're doing in New York, I will be speaking at the UCC church in near North Hills. I will be speaking to a group of physicians, and I will be speaking for the public nursing school at Adelphi.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vicki, is there a way to order it other than Amazon for some of us who are trying to separate ourselves a little from that particular vendor?
We're hoping that it will get picked up by Barnes and Noble, and so far they haven't.
Okay, so I can't order directly from you.
No.
Okay.
If you come to one of the events in New York, I will have books for sale with me that you can
I would
sell
love
me.
to be at one of those. I'd also love to connect you. My daughter-in-law's mother is an ordained UCC minister, and I'd love to bring this to her attention too.
So on April, hang on a second, I gotta get the date. On April 26th, I will be at the UCC church after their service. So their morning service is at 10 a.m. It's in Garden City.
Garden City, yep.
UCC church, and they'll have the services at 10. So after that, there will be a forum with my Aunt Mary and me there, and I'll have books for sale.
Oh, cool. Rhea, you want to take the train here? I'll drive out with you.
We'll talk offline.
I know.
I mean, we'll talk.
Throwing it out there.
And Lisa, if you just send me an email, I'll put it in my folder to remind you when I have more details about it.
Remind me, if you would, your email address.
It's just vicky.panhouse@gmail.com.
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, I've never written a book, but I have been a book widow. When Rand and his business partner wrote a technical book about aluminum structural design. So I would recommend to the family and spouse of anyone who does decide to take up the idea of writing a book, get yourself a new and very engrossing hobby.
Yes. Well,
You-
I have lots of hobbies right now, as well as my husband. We both decided to learn a musical instrument. So I'm learning the flute and he's learning the saxophone.
Good.
Trying to
Fran,
envision
sorry.
music written for just those two instruments.
There are, believe it or not, there are duets.
I totally believe you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
This has really been
ready to?
fascinating, Vicki. Thank you.
It has been, and like
Yeah,
I said, it's
that
quite a
that was good.
life, quite a life of love and devotion.
And it's
So-
a very happy story that she's still
Around to enjoy it, yeah.
well, that she's around and that she is you know, so present. She continues to be so present.
How
Yeah,
many, she and your mother, how many siblings were there in in their family?
there were three sisters. My aunt was Mary was the oldest, and then my mother, who passed away in 1999, and my other aunt Ruth, who passed away in the 2000s.
So the oldest lived the longest.
Yes,
Is living
and the
longest.
one that was exposed to most, the other two didn't travel at all, and
Yeah, the one who was in so many incredibly dangerous, treacherous situations, places, amazing.
Yeah, and places where there were rare diseases and
right,
know.
yes, before penicillin was widely available.
Right.
The only unfortunate thing is she is losing her hearing and her sight. She has macular degeneration in her eyes, and so, but she's still very much with it. And
it's called resilience.
yes, it is.
You mentioned you mentioned where that she lives on Long Island. Does she live in a facility of some sort, or does she live with family?
No, she lives in an independent living apartment. Yes, in North Hills. It's for some reason I can't.
On the border of Nassau and Suffolk, I think.
You're asking the wrong person. For those of you who don't know, I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. So.
Right. No, but I will look it up in about 10 seconds.
Yeah, it's a large facility that she lives in.
And she's still in independent living, huh? That's good.
Yes. She has a night person that comes in.
Oh, actually,
it's called the Bristol.
Right. Okay. No, it's actually fairly west in Nassau. It's just north of Garden City, west of Hicksville. Yeah, that's closest in my life.
And her partner, my uncle Alfredo, is from Mozambique. And he lives in the memory care of that same facility.
What a life.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are
It's very interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
If there are no more questions or comments, thank you so much, Vicki, and please give our love to Aunt Mary. When you talk to her next. I think he's got a lot of new fans. I wanted to mention that next month, Annette Dunlap, who spoke to us in November, will be coming back. Annette is Frank Cleveland's official biographer, but she has also expanded her interest into other first ladies. And she's going to be giving us an excerpt from a program that she's doing for the Osher Lifelong Learning here down here in North Carolina at North Carolina State. And the topic is First Ladies and the Politics of Fashion. So we'll celebrate Women's History Month with a little interesting ideas about corsets or not.
Fran,
Sounds good.
I wrote an article about that topic, focusing on Michelle Obama.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
It's a
Okay.
short article. It's a newspaper column, so it's about 800 words. But I might like to say she might get a kick out of it if this is her
Okay.
focus.
Yeah.
So
Would you send it to us too? I have a vague recollection of reading it because I love reading your stuff.
yeah, it's not, it's not a new article. Obviously, I wrote it
No,
when she
no,
was in the White
that
House,
I
Yeah.
but
understand.
yeah, I'd be
Thanks.
glad to send it out. Yeah, it was, you may remember the whole thing about when she was wearing a sweater. She wore a sweater set to meet the Queen.
Yep.
Yeah, so okay. Yeah, I'll
Oh,
send it.
that'll be fun. Yeah, do
I'll send
send
it
it
to
out.
Yeah,
somebody.
that'd be
Who should I
interesting.
send
Yeah.
it to?
Well, Annette lives down here in North Carolina, so we occasionally get together, and right now we're trying to clear our calendars so that we can have lunch, and I'll talk to her about getting together with you, maybe.
Okay.
Give you a
Yeah.
chance to chat.
Say, Rita,
Okay.
maybe if you send it to Marty, she can send it to the people who are on her mailing list.
Sure.
Yeah,
It's
that'd be
I'll
great.
have to send it as a PDF because when I wrote it, the Register, New Haven Register, which is the newspaper I wrote it for, was not doing a very good job of putting of keeping. They have not done a good job of keeping newspaper columns on their website. So it's going to have to be a PDF, which I know is a little bit annoying for people, but that's
Sounds
No
good to me.
problem. Fine.
just, you can get over it. So I'm just,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Not
Some
a
of us still
problem.
work with that.
All right.
And
Okay, well, again, thank you, everybody, and I guess we'll say
Thank you,
goodnight
Vicki.
and stay
thank you so
warm.
much.
Have
Good
a nice
night.
Wonderful.
Valentine's
Thank
Day,
you.
and
Thank you.
we will see everybody next month.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.